All right, welcome to another podcast edition. Today we have Dr. Jason West, and I'll let him introduce himself. But he has been a mentor of mine, and those of you know us locally, and the Nectar is everything that we learned from this gentleman. So it is really exciting to have you on. I appreciate it. I know you are rocking busy all the time, so to carve out of your schedule and join us for about an hour here is exciting, and I know it's going to shed some light for a ton of people, and that's our goal. So, Doc, go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your background, your history, how you kind of got into what you're doing, and I know you have a long history and a long clinic in chiropractic care with your dad and your grandfather and all that good stuff.
Well, thanks for having me. It's not a problem to carve out the time. I'm just sorry it took a little bit of schedule coordination. Jason West, private practice in the wonderful little railroad town of Pocatello, Idaho, which I just love this place. So I'm always propping my little town because I just love living here. Fourth generation doc. Our office started 108 years ago with my great grandfather, and then grandfather, then dad, and then me. And I've got a son that's in a program in Tampa Bay right now named Carter, and Carter's going to be generation number 5, which I'm just uber proud and excited about. And I actually have 5 sons, and 2.5 of them, I know that doesn't add up to math, but I have one that's kind of back and forth, want to go into healthcare. And so that's it's just something I'm really excited about. I started off graduated in 2000 as a chiropractic physician, and was thinking I was going to go in and do a traditional, manipulative approach, working on backs and necks and neuromusculoskeletal things. And my dad got really sick from a mercury toxicity, got a piece of metal down into his GI systems, and it literally caused scurvy, which it took us like a year and a half to actually figure this out. And we ended up at a vitamin infusion clinic with Dr. Taylor in Oklahoma, and at least under his advice, saying, like, this is what we should do, and turn my dad's health around. I was so impressed. I went back to school and got a second doctorate as a naturopathic doc to do vitamin infusion treatments. And that's what I really like. I really enjoy that. And then we started picking up some Lyme disease cases, and then we ended up in the autoimmune world, and then we ended up in the cancer support therapy world. And so when people ask me all the time, what type of medicine do you practice? I tried to say, well, we do integrative medicine, we do functional medicine, we do, functional alternative medicine, we do naturopathic medicine. And now I just tell people, like, I just do my medicine. And, and the goal behind that is, look, we just want to try and help people to get balanced. But we have a very unique, patient segment, and that is really people that have chronic illnesses, chronic diseases that are round pegs that everybody's trying to put into square holes. And so really nothing ever easy comes in the office. No one walks in and says, I have a hangnail. They usually walk in and say, I have, today, I'm just thinking, we had a PANS disease case on a 12-year-old kid. We had a cancer support therapy case. We've had 2 Lyme cases. I had someone from Israel that flew in today, and I just really enjoy taking care of those types of cases. So it's a blended approach. We do have, a nurse practitioner as our medical doctor. We have an acupuncturist. We have a mind-body healer, and then my blend of chiropractic and naturopathic services, and just complete. I'm going in December will be 23 years.
Wow, good for you. And it is true. I mean, you mentioned Israel. When we started coming out there and just observing, it was just, I guess, for lack of better words, an eclectic group. But we were meeting people from all over the place, and most of them not from Pocatello.
It's true. It's such a double-edged sword, because I've had, patients. Had another patient, and her mom flew out from Rhode Island. That was it. So Israel, Rhode Island. Yeah, they're not exactly next door to Idaho. And what I found out is that when you just try and do your best and help people, I mean, we do promotion through our YouTube channel and through Facebook
Sure.
and some other things. But almost always is people will find you from a referral or recommendation, and then they'll go research you on the internet and on YouTube, and then they will make a decision to come. But yeah, I would say 80, maybe 90% of our patients are not from my town.
Wow. And so these tough cases, I'm not sure, how they typically approach, but I know you told me when we started doing this, it was going to open up some doors. And we get this statement a lot, is that I've tried everything else. Nobody listens to me. And I know I have something going wrong, but nobody seems to be able to find it. My blood labs look normal. All these other things that I've tested in the traditional realms are just not finding anything. And so walk me through your processes of kind of a patient journey, what you do to evaluate. And then, we can talk about some courses of treatment. I think it's good in this, ultimately in this podcast, Lessons from Legends. And I consider you obviously one of the legends out there. I know you teach as well, on some of these protocols and things like that. So let's just shed some light on some protocols and I don't know, your attack at, say, Lyme's disease and what you're looking for, and some of the co-infections and how you deal with some of that stuff.
Well, the first thing that I would say is there are no rules. There's no set protocol.
Yeah.
There isn't a, hey, take 2 cups of flour, an egg, a third a cup of oil, baking soda, throw it together in the oven for 300 degrees for 20 minutes. Like I've had a lot of patients that have gone back to Louisiana or Texas or England or Canada or wherever they're from. And periodically their doc will call and say, well, what's the secret? And they're expecting a specific protocol. And working with, I have a coach right now in my life that's the saddest thing that I hear in the office is, I wish I would have found you or a doctor like you a long time ago.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily me, but they're like, I just wish I would have found someone like you. And as we've moved into the teaching and in the coaching realm, in that my coach was saying, well, kind of, sum it up. And what he found, what was fascinating, is he's like, the best way to describe it is it's really intuitive medicine at the highest level. And so what we mean by that is so many decisions that we come to is part of, like, I read voraciously, I attend seminars religiously, trying to learn new things, new modalities, new machines, new interventions to help people. And then when someone comes in, my goal is, number one, to make sure that they're a person, not a patient. So I had a patient about 10 or 11 years ago that really changed my whole patient interaction, because she came in with metastatic breast cancer. Everything had failed medically. There was no chemotherapy. There was no radiation options. They had done, a double mastectomy. It spread all over the body. And she did not come with unrealistic expectations to get healed. She came and she said, Dr. West, I want you to make me as healthy as possible before I die. And so I did the workup. We jumped right in and, what's wrong? And, what are your options? What are your labs? What are your imaging? We went through all of that. What are your options? What have you tried medically? What have you tried in alternative medicine? What's the herbs? What touch therapy? Like all of that. And so I got done, and here I am thinking, I'm a really good doctor. I went through this. I have a pretty good understanding what's happening. And I said, okay, let me go get my team to help. And so I walked around to the other side of the table, getting ready to go out in the hall and grab my team. And I said, do you have any questions or comments? And she gently put her hand on my coat and she said, Dr. West, I just want to tell you that I'm not a number. I don't want to be a patient. I'm a real person. And I sat there for a minute. I'm like, oh my gosh, She's just a patient. And when I say just a patient, like all I knew was her medical history, what she was eating, what time she was going to bed, what medications she was on. And from that intervention, I recognized like one of the biggest things we do to start is I want to not have patients be patients. I want to turn them into people. So I have this little script that I go through. I'm like, okay, Todd, you're here. What color do you like? What do you like to eat? What do you like to drink? What do you like to do for fun? When was the last time you felt healthy? Is there a vacation spot that you like to go? Where do you want to go before you die? What do you like to read? What movies do you like? Like I have this thing. And the number one goal is look, I want you to recognize that you're a person to me, not a patient. I think this is, even though it doesn't have to do with treatments and modalities, I think this is really important. So that's how I do all of my interaction. Then I tell them right after, okay, so Todd, we want to help you with your elbow or your headaches or your energy or whatever your concerns are. And then I say, so that's my number one goal. But my second goal is to be the happiest, funniest, best doctor that you've ever been to. So I want to be a real person to you. I want you to understand like what makes me think. My favorite color is light blue. My favorite thing to eat is prime rib. I like water. My favorite thing to do is to ride dirt bikes with my sons. When I grow up, I want to be a doctor. My favorite movie is The Princess Bride. My favorite place to go is Alaska. I really want to go to New Zealand because there's no snakes there. And my favorite book is me. So here's my book. Like I wrote a book about hidden secrets to curing your chronic disease. So when you talk about the workup, I mean, that takes 10 minutes or so to go through. And I think it's vital. And so I do that first. I want to turn you into a person. Then we want to go through and be like, look, we got to figure out what's throwing you off. And what is it? Is it something we found on the microscope? Is it something from the blood tests? Since you've been in the office, I've added just an enormous testing arm. So I test for brain neurotransmitters. I test for mold. We do a whole blood nutrient profile. So I'm looking inside of the cells with nutrients and essential fatty acids. There's a parasite test. There's what's called a DNA life test where we're looking at your genes and we're saying, okay, is something in your environment switching off this susceptibility? And then from there, I'm like, okay, now we want to figure out what are you imbalanced in? Is it omega-3s? Is it a neurotransmitter process? Is it a protein? Is it a vitamin? Is it a mineral? Is it an emotion? Is it a subluxation? What is it? And then we try and customize a formula off that. And when we start putting those plans together, I just really try and listen to not only what the patient is telling me, but also whatever the universe is inspiring me. And that's where our treatments come from. And one of these days, I'm going to have enough courage to completely follow through with everything that comes to me. Sometimes, and when I say that, part of it is tongue in cheek and part of it is for real, because when you put together plans, a lot of times I feel comfortable in it, but sometimes there's people that come in that I just intuitively know right away, oh yeah, we're totally going to knock it out of the park, or I can't help this person.
Sure.
And I would love to sometime have the courage. I had this happen, about 2 years ago. I had a patient come from back east that walked in literally arms folded, closed off stance. And she said, I've been to 27 doctors. None of them have been able to help me. And you can't either. You're not going to be able to help me. And I literally was like, okay, well, why are you here? Well, I heard from my, aunt that, you really helped her. So I decided, but I just know you can't help me. And I was like, you're right. I can't help you. Like, we don't even need to keep going because you've already made up your mind that you're unhelpable and I'm going to be doctor failure number 28. There's no purpose to go forward. So, and then at other times I've had people that have told me something and I'm like immediately, hey, I know exactly what to do, exactly what to give them. And I can see I can absolutely see them getting better. And so just trying to make sure that I totally line up with the energies of the patient, the energies of the universe, the energies of me, and then just trying to be that person. That's the medicine that I earnestly try to practice.
Oh, that's incredible. And I remember a statement at one time you, as I was trying to learn from you, and there was so many moving parts, and I asked you, I said, well, why that direction? And you said, it's hard to bottle up 20 years at the time, 20 years of experience is what you said, 20 years of experience of why I'm making that decision. So I appreciate that. That is, it's intuition, it's listening to the patients, it's bringing all these things together to be able to make those decisions. Intuitive medicine. Um, that's interesting. I like that. That's really cool.
Yeah, I'm really trying to just step into that definition. I can't claim it. Like I had, someone that brought it in, but I'm like, yeah, that's really what we're trying to do. And it's not that it's not heavy science. I mean, sometimes doctors have said, like I had a doc call me from Louisiana and he said, hey, my patient had Lyme disease. They flew out. They spent 3 weeks with you. They were substantially better. I've been working with them for a while. What did you do for them? And I said to him, okay, I just tried as hard as I could to put them together. Like that's the secret. Try and put the patients back together. And he said, well, why did you decide to give them, selenium? And why did you decide to give them NAC and alpha lipoic acid instead of, an omega-3 approach? And I said, because I felt that way. And I read in this article, in this study, and I was trying to say this study is what pushed me in that direction. But the reason why I gave it to him is because it lined up with my insides. And he's like, well, this is frustrating. And I said, I totally understand. When I came back to practice with my dad, we would go down the hall and he would be like, hey, this person needs vitamin C and boron, and this person needs vitamin C and biflavonoids, and this person needs vitamin C and copper. And I'm like, how do you know that? And he'd say, well, I just know. And I was like, this is so unfair. Like, how am I going to learn all that?
Yeah.
And his advice to me was really good. And for who is ever listening, maybe this will help you. Is he said, Jason, and this was back in 2003. This is when I was thinking I shouldn't have been a doctor. I had a really good job working for UPS when I was to go into Utah State. And if I would have stayed there, I would have, I think matriculated up through the pathway. And my dad looked at me and he said, hey, Jason, you know the difference between you and me? And I said, Dad, I'm not trying to be a smart aleck, but you have gray hair and I don't have gray hair. And I think you just have more seasoning. And I think people are listening to you because, no offense, you're older. Like you're older than them. And so they're looking at your wisdom and experience. And he looked at me and he said, hey, no offense taken. That's not what it is. And I said, okay, tell me what it is. Cause at the time I'm like, I'm out of here. Like, I'm not even going to, I'm going to go back. I actually had a job working for United Healthcare, looking into kind of being their alternative claims thing. This was where I was really thinking maybe I'm not supposed to be in the trenches. And he said, Jason, 80% of communication is nonverbal. When you walk into a room, you're hoping that you can help people. And when I walk into a room, I know that I can help people. So I'm communicating 80%. I know I can help you. You're communicating 80%. I hope, or I think I can help you. And that's when he put the bug in me that, hey, continuing education is vital. And you got to go out and you have got to pay your dues in continuing education until when you walk into the room and you see the person's condition and you say, oh, I know exactly what to do. And then they'll pick up on it. And then you don't have to worry about patients following your recommendations or suggestions. You don't have to worry about marketing. You don't have to worry, you just have to serve the patient. But you think, and I know, you got to get to where you know. And so that was where kind of that intuitive medicine thing kind of started here. And so literally our mission statement we've updated, we've literally say in our program, we provide intuitive medicine to the medically lost and confused. And our patients are in the battle of their lives, and it's our duty to transform their most precious resource, which is their hope and their blood and their physiology, And so we have this, root in holistic healing, the whole body experience for now and in the future. And that's what we're doing. So it's literally that, like, it's my why has really changed over the last year of saying, I really want to get dialed into this.
That's incredible. I had a conversation with my boy the other day, and we had the, I guess, pleasure, if you will, that of having Bruce Lipton as an adjunct faculty when I was in our doctorate work, and we sat at one of his weekend seminars, and it was just mind blown. But full circle, in the connection to this, he was describing essentially the lost component when it comes to health was frequencies, and how these people and ourselves resonate at different frequencies. And he literally disproved the genetic code and saying, like, the genetic code was just it was a piece of meat. It's protein, but it's the receptors on the cell that causes that DNA to mutate and adapt to what, or not adapt to our environments. But the crazy long explanation shortened up was that frequency had a connection outside of our bodies, and it was his proof of the human spirit. And that's what I make that connection. And what I'm hearing you say too is that it's that frequency, it's the human spirit, it's the physical experience that we're having. Yet, like you mentioned, that patient is like, hey, I'm still a person, and we still exist in that same arena, if you will. And that's beautiful. I appreciate that, because it's being able to know at that frequency and resonate that frequency, that you can come in and just I can bring the objective components of everything that I've learned, but still make a intuitive call based on those collective objective experiences is huge. So tell me about Lyme's a little bit. I mean, I know that's a big component, and it is a big struggle for a lot of people, even treating in the natural health realm with supplements and things like that. And it's got a high, I guess, failure rate for a lot of people as far as getting rid of Lyme's. And I know you mentioned one time, and I agree with you, that I feel like we all have Lyme's at one point or, versions of that. And then it comes down to an immune system issue, but tackle that topic as much as you want for me.
Okay. So first of all, I think Bruce Lipton, awesome. I have gone through the biology of belief numerous times.
Yes.
I've been through it. I've read it once. I've listened to it twice. I need to do it. Listen to it a third time. It's one of the recommended readings, literally, of every patient. So they're like, "Hey, Dr. West, what should I do?" So we do our workup, and then they're like, "Hey, what should I do?" And I'm like, "Okay, here's what we need to do. Number one, get your body on a schedule. Healthy and alive foods, avoid anything that is pre-processed, prefabricated, pre-digested, any synthetic stuff." Yeah. And then I'm like, okay, take your recommended supplements that we put together for you. And your homework assignment is you listen to the biology of belief. Like, that's number one. If it's causing relationship problems, I tell them, okay, now do the honeymoon effect. Again, another Bruce Lipton book. I tell them, Letting Go by David Hawkins is a really good one. Forgive for Good, Your Ultimate Guide to Health and Happiness by Fred Lushkin. And I said, you don't have to do all of them, but you do know that your mind's here and your body's here, and they go like this. And I'm not for a second trying to tell you that it's in your mind. You're not a hypochondriac. You're not a malingerer. You're not an embellisher. There's a physiologic reason why you don't look good, why you don't feel good. But then the second part is, now we've got to start, we got to bring them both together. If you physiologically don't feel good, it's really hard on your energy, your spirit, your soul, your mind, your body, whatever you want to call it. And if that component isn't working, you can't get better physiologically either. So they go together like that. When it comes to Lyme disease, the best way to answer that is to really kind of look at how I got into it. Because I didn't get out of school thinking I want to treat Lyme disease, which I would say is probably 50% of my practice is Lyme disease. And because in school, doing microbiology as an undergrad, I learned that Lyme disease, literally, it's a vector-borne illness. Some people get a bullseye rash. You can move to the joints, 2 weeks of antibiotics, usually doxycycline or Rocephin, everybody's healed, next disease. Like, that's what I learned in undergrad. That was cemented or like super glued into place in my postgrad, Southern California University of Health Sciences. Okay, well, here's Lyme disease, and being in the neuromusculoskeletal world, if people have these aches and pains and they have experience, in Connecticut or Virginia or maybe Minnesota, then maybe they have Lyme disease. That's what I thought for 6 years. And then when my dad got really sick and I started doing really into the vitamin C infusion worlds and starting learning that 500 milligrams of vitamin C is like nonsense to survive on. That's the RDA levels, but no one can live on that. Yeah. Maybe refugee camp people can literally survive on that, but to thrive and to be healthy, we need way more than that. Well, in that second doctoral program, there was a doctor that said, hey, there's this mismanaged, misdiagnosed, mistreated, misunderstood disease called Lyme disease, and it's the great imitator. And if you put 40 people into a room, one person's going to have heart problems, one person's going to have hormone problems, one person's going to have joint problems, one's going to have emotional imbalances. Like, you can't diagnose with symptoms. This is why I think it's so enigmatic to medicine, because medicine's like, hey, here's the symptoms, here's the disease, here's the drug, name it, blame it, contain it, next disease. And I'm not trying to devalue anybody in that medical system. I just think that's the training. And granted, there's all-stars over there and that there's non-all-stars over there, just like any other profession, right? So that there's some guys that have taken that foundation and turned blossom into healers, but there's a lot of people that are like they're just on the conveyor belt, and they're telling people, look, if you had Lyme disease, you had to go to that area. You'd have to have a bullseye rash and a positive 5-band Western blot, and then we treat it with antibiotics and you're healed. So I learned that. And when that doctor said that, this is the great imitator, half of me thought, oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about, because this is what I've learned for 10 years in school. It's a vector-borne illness, bullseye rash, arthritis, antibiotics. And the other half of me is like, wow, I know a lot of people like that. I know a lot of people that probably have Lyme disease. And then I started really questioning, I really started questioning, where is this in the healthcare spectrum? And then I went back and revisited Antoine Beauchamp, who I think is literally one of the geniuses in medicine, that would say it's the terrain that causes the illness. His contemporary at the time was Pasteur. Pasteur said, no, it's the bug, and we got to, pasteurize everything like that. And medicine followed Pasteur and said, it's the bug. Yeah. And when it comes to Lyme disease, I think this is really important to educate and tell people it's not. It's the terrain. And Beauchamp was the first one that said, look, if we get, quote, biofilms into the area, it can turn into a fungus, a parasite, a bacteria, a virus. There's something called transubstantiation, where the organism can change. Well, that doesn't fit in the biochemistry Pasteur model. And that's why when we were talking, I think that there's a close connection, and I don't know if it's a change or metamorphosis, where Epstein-Barr can turn into Lyme, or Lyme can turn into Epstein-Barr. I see so many people that have that connection. And so I'm kind of pointing out to the universe, is it possible for that disease to go back and forth? And I don't want to run away from any of the education that I have, but at the same time, what I tell people and what my goal is to be open-minded to the experience of the patient and their result. I've had patients come in and my dad told me this is going to happen. He's like, sometimes what's going to happen is you're going to learn a lot more from the patients than the patients learn from you. And so when you have someone come in that's had Lyme disease, had cancer, had autoimmune thing, and then they've been researching it, and then they are their own medical experiment, they will teach you, hey, this is what's helping me. This is what is not helping me. I tried this treatment. It partially helped, or it put me into a healing crisis, or it made me really, really ill. And so when we talk about Lyme disease, I think the biggest thing is, number one, you have to just listen to people without judgment. And so if they start telling you something that you've never heard before, it doesn't mean that it doesn't work. It just means that you haven't heard it. And sometimes there's jewels over there. And then sometimes there's like non-jewels, like you're like, oh, okay, that I don't know where that comes from. And then with Lyme disease, I just think the problem is it's immune system dysfunction, that in some people it's Lyme disease, and some people it's cancer, and some people it's Hashimoto's, and some people it's MS, and some people it's osteoarthritis, and some people it's fibromyalgia, and it's their terrain that's choosing the disease. I see a lot of like terrain where I'll see something in someone's blood and their blood tests, and I'll be like, oh, they totally have RA. And then they'll tell me, oh, my joints are fine. I have this horrible hormone imbalance or something. And I'm like, well, that I would have totally gone in a different direction. And then working on the terrain is where it's at. Like if we just concentrate on making people better without judgments or preconceived notions, many times their disease, their condition, their problem will go away. So for me, it's not a disease process. And I literally say in our uptake, I'll say, hey, Todd, what's your diagnosis? And you'll be like, oh, it's, heme pass this erythropoiesis. I just had this condition come in. And I'm like, I don't even know what that is. I thought I've heard of everything. And I got to go look it up. And then I tell the patient, I'm like, do you agree with your diagnosis? I think this is really important. And most of the time, the patients, I'd say 50-50. The patients will say yes or no. And then I always tell them, well, you're not your diagnosis. Yeah. You're a person. I don't want you to allow your disease to become your rate limiting, like, definition of who you are. I don't want that to, like, I'm all for understanding what's going on. But when you start becoming fibromyalgia, instead of saying I'm dealing with fibromyalgia, like it's a whole different ballgame. And then it's immune system reprogramming, it's lymphatic drainage, it's nerve reprogramming, it's again, positive mental attitude. It's really putting, like, what are you putting into your system? And then it's super underrated, but getting your body on a schedule and getting water and good food is, too many people don't pay attention to that. We think, oh, we're just going to go and we're going to reset the stellate ganglion and we're going to do sodium ascorbate therapy and ultraviolet therapy. And I mean, this is my world, or a type of prescription or a type of intervention, when maybe what we need to do is to tell the patient, look, you need to go to bed at 10, you need to get up at 6, you need to eat a healthy breakfast at 6:30, you need to eat again at 11, you need to be doing 100 ounces of water, and you need to get away from the news and from murder stories and like stop.
Yes.
You can't do that. You can't get that negativity in your life and be healthy. And so that was a long-winded response, but that's where I start with these difficult conditions.
No, that's beautiful. And helping people understand that it's a season, not a toe tag condition. It's crazy. We had a beautiful lady in today, and she had lost her hair, come in, she had the cap. So it was immediately, that was, we know what she had been through. But I was reading through her history, and she's in remission since 2020. And she smiles and she goes, yes, I was the only one out of Huntsman, or the first one out of Huntsman, that's ever had this rare lymphoma called alopecia lymphoma. And I'd never heard of it, but it was like just this like badge of honor that they discharged her with. And even though that she's been in remission, she's still carrying that badge of honor. So that's huge. That is huge for doctors to understand. It's huge for, for people to understand. I remember a quote at one time, but he hasn't been around for a while. I'm trying to remember his name, but Deepak Chopra had mentioned at one time the concept of nocebos. A placebo versus a nocebo. Nocebo is basically when you put that tag on, like, hey, get your stuff together. You got 6 months. Tell your kids goodbye. This is, and people would literally die to that tea. And I see that a lot with fibromyalgia. I see that a lot with Lyme's, that people are just like, I got it. This is me. This is, so helping them break free of those chains. I love that concept. So kudos to you on that. And
I love asking this question, and I frequently disagree with patients' diagnosis, but when they come in and they have this and they'll say, I've been to 8 doctors or 10 doctors or whatever, and this is what they think that I have, that I have polymyalgia rheumatica, I have Lyme disease, I have mixed connective tissue disease, I have Hashimoto's, ankylosing spondylitis, Sjogren's disease, whatever it is. And I always ask them, I'm like, well, do you believe that diagnosis? And yeah, I do, or no, I don't. I'm like, well, I don't believe in that diagnosis. And they'll look at me and they'll be like, no, like my HLA 27 said, like it says, this, and I'll say, but here's what I think's happened is literally, I know there's not a medical diagnosis for this, but this is what I really believe. Like you're out of energy, like you're not getting energy, like this chronic infection that you have, or this hormone imbalance, or this malnutrition that you have, or whatever it is making it so that we're stealing electrons and energy from where it's supposed to go into the body. And we have an opportunistic thing that has moved in and has taken over, and it's in your nerves. And so we call it neuropathy, or it's in your brain, and we're calling it, senile dementia or brain fog or whatever else. And if we fix the energy, then we fix you. And then the diagnosis, it doesn't matter what it is. So I have to be careful to say that, but I tell people all the time, I don't believe your diagnosis. And the reason why I believe that is because I've had so many people, and you can see it on our website and our blog. Like I have literally over 1,000 testimonials of people that were out of hope and out of time and out of options. They didn't know what to do, and we put them back together. So it's not just me saying it. And then we start just saying, look, let's just focus on getting you healthy, and let's empower you. And I have these t-shirts in the office that when people get, 80% or better, we give them a t-shirt, and it's a Superman thing, and it has 2 thumbs on it that go like this. And it says, you are not your diagnosis. And on the back, we say, like, you decide to write your story. Like, just because you have a diagnosis of this condition doesn't mean it's going to end that way. Like we can change that narrative if you and I work together. I'm the all-star coach, you're the player. And if we are working, like if we both do what we're supposed to do, like we're going to win this game, and granted, I recognize that there is a life component, that no one gets out of life without dying, and some other things. Like I'm not saying that we're going to turn you into an 18-year-old specimen, but when we get, energy and vitality back in your system, like there's things that are better. And so many times I never thought going into alternative medicine that I would have end of life discussions, but I have a lot of end of life discussions because people will come and say, I have this diagnosis and this is what's going to happen. I have a month or 3 months or, a year to live, or the chemotherapy radiation didn't work, or my immunologics and stuff are not working for my autoimmune disease. And I'm just trying. And when we put that together, I've had so many times people have said, thank you so much. Like this has been, I've got another 6 months, or I've got another where I really felt pretty good. I know the disease process happening. I know I'm going to check out, but I had a really good run after you just started working on the energy and everything else.
Wow.
Which has been that's been really, really fulfilling. Yeah. To do. I just had a patient move on to the next phase, die not too long ago. And right before he died, he told me, look, they told me when I came here, I had a month to live, and it's been 16 months. And I really felt pretty good. I got to go on a trip. I got my house organized. I got my estate put together. And my family knows exactly what to do. And if you wouldn't have done that, I wouldn't have got that done. And, literally I'll see you on the other side. It may be one of my favorite stories. And that whole time I've been in practice, just being able to help to do that.
Yeah. Just to be able to live those last months or even a year at another level. And I remember, I appreciate this too. And I couldn't thank you enough. I know when my mom was in stage and I had the conversation with you of like, just getting her as much vitamin C as possible. And you had mentioned, still at terminal levels, the vitamin C can, in an IV, but vitamin C can even just help with the pain, the inflammation, and even make them more comfortable, or at those levels that you're talking about, help people just be functional for the last months or many months of their lives. So that is cool. That is just, yeah, it's cool to think about. So the game is energy. Schallenberger was on, and he does his the bioenergy testing, looking at getting oxygen or maximizing oxygen. I learned major autohemotherapy through you, and of course, the minor to the major levels of that. Dr. Levy was talking about his newfound fun tool, which was nebulizing hydrogen peroxide. I think we can talk about hydrogen peroxide in IV. I don't know if there's any issues with that. We lost our connection. Our pharmacist is not doing that for me anymore. So I need to talk to you about some sources of that. But so talk about the energy game. I mean, what are the top, and not to say there's a silver bullet for these things, but things that you see about getting those energy stores, getting the mitochondria what they need, and producing more energy. How do you go about that?
Well, when I started practice, I thought everything it's biomechanic related. Like there's something, pinching on the nerve. It's not lined up. It's throwing the muscle dysfunction. Like I thought, and then I'm like, okay, it's not all that. It's biochemistry. Our pathways aren't right, and literally breaking it down. If oxygen is the final electron acceptor in the the electron transport chain, the byproducts are water, carbon dioxide, and energy. If we don't have oxygen in there, the byproducts are lactic acid and pyruvate, which the acid causes dysfunction disease. So I thought it was biochemistry. And then I'm like, no, it's hormone precursors. If we don't have a balance of estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, DHES, and cortisol, like there's an imbalance. And then all of that leads to where I'm thinking now, it's not just energy, it's only energy. And biochemical dysfunction causes lack of energy, and biomechanical dysfunction and subluxation and pinched nerves and muscular imbalances cause low energy. And hormones, if they're out of balance, and the pituitary isn't talking to the thyroid, and the thyroid isn't talking to the adrenals, the consequence is low energy, and low energy causes disease. And so really my whole focus, for everybody, is about energy and about getting back. And when I started thinking that way, I really started understanding a way to understand patients better. And an easy example of this is when people come in and they're like, hey, Dr. West, my shoulder's really hurting. Like that's how they're trying to communicate with you. But that is not what they're saying. What they're saying to you is, I can't lay on my side. I can't hug my spouse. I can't fish. I can't sew. I can't play the piano. I can't comfortably drive. And it's affecting my life. And I'm willing to come to you if you can give me back what I've lost. Yes, so what comes out is my shoulder hurts. But what we're saying is I've lost something. And then you apply it to like when people have stomach problems. What they're saying is, I've lost my GI health. I can't eat. I can't process. I can't go to the bathroom right, or with kidney problems or whatever else it is. So what they're saying is, this is how I'm trying to communicate. But what they're meaning is that 80% nonverbal thing of I'm losing things. So when we talk about energy, whether it's hydrogen peroxide, whether it's dimethyl sulfur oxide, whether it's ozone therapy or hyperbaric or ozone or hyperbaric oxygen, the goal is we want to put, oxygen is that important molecule that drives the energy process, but we've also got to have, vitamin C and NAD and FAD and essential fatty acid. And when we drive the energy pathway, like literally whatever it is, it seems to improve, even for terminal cases. Like so when someone comes in, like I've got stage 4 cancer and I'm trying to get all my affairs in order, like no one in that process ever tells them, hey, let's work on you and let's make you healthy. Like, let's get your energy levels and let's get you balanced and let's try and get everything dialed in. Usually what they'll say is, here, let's try this chemotherapy drug. Let's try this experimental medicine or this radiation or what. And it's not that it's wrong. Like I believe that there's a place for that in the condition. It's that we're forgetting the energy component. I think that's so neglected in the traditional approach. And I have another great story of a patient that came in and she's like, I've had, breast cancer, and she looked like a refugee camp survivor. And she said, they told me that I'm fixed and that I'm in remission. And I was looking at her, and my thought in my head was like, please don't die in the office. Like it's literally that. And she's like, yeah, I'm cured. And I said, really? Well, how do you feel about that? And she's literally crying. And she's like, hey, if this is the cure, maybe I should be dead. Like I feel so horrible about it. And I told her, I'm like, hey, that's kind of when medicine stops. And then where I take over is I just want to help you to build up. And by the way, I'm not the only one that does this. There's lots of doctors that put it on the line and do exactly what I do. I'm not special in that regard. I just wanted to tell her, like, okay, well, let's work on building you up and putting you back together. And so it doesn't matter if it's a sprained ankle or if it's, a liver metastasis or if it's Parkinson's disease or like the whole goal always is, okay, let's figure out what you're deficient in. Let's just build up those energy pathways. And again, it could be, when I say like, it's not an overall just, hey, we're going to throw it out. It's energy. Like we do want to say, okay, is it energy that we need to go to the liver? Is it energy that needs to go to the muscles? Is it energy that needs to go to the nerves or the hormones? And then my favorite, energy treatments, vitamin C infusions. I love using dilute hydrogen peroxide where we're taking, and it's funny because I profiled an amazing response to ankylosing spondylitis where a guy was literally fusing, and we did this protocol where we balanced him. And the biggest thing that helped him was dilute hydrogen peroxide. And I went out on YouTube. I'm like, hey, look at this amazing story. This is how much better he is. Like he literally was like, we had a statement from him at the beginning. And then about a year later, we had a statement from him like, oh man, I was hiking up on these mountains. I got this trophy elk. And I said, well, what did we do to help you? And he's like, oh, this IV hydrogen peroxide is just great. And I got all these haters from YouTube. Like I had people coming in to my Google reviews at my office and saying, he's killing people. Like I have no relationships with these people whatsoever. Yeah. And I'm like, hey, wait, like, and I'm responding back going like, they're like, he's killing people. I'm like, it's not straight hydrogen peroxide. Yeah. Like, it's just like Dr. Levy was saying, when you nebulize hydrogen peroxide, it's not straight. You're doing a dilute amount of hydrogen peroxide through a nebulizer that literally acts like Alka-Seltzer for your respiratory pathways in your lungs. And so I love pushing oxygen into the body, whether it's hydrogen peroxide, ozone therapy, rectal ozone, ear insufflation, drinking hydrogen peroxide, or drinking ozonated water. I think that's a great pathway. I also think that there's energy from touch therapy, where literally like the therapeutic touch, chiropractic, massage therapy, any of the physical medicine, physical therapy are fantastic. Energetic healing, I'm all for it. Also, getting the right supplements into people, liposomal vitamin C. I love protomorphogen or glandular therapy, where we're literally taking processed cow thyroid and processed pig thyroid and stuff like that, and giving it to people to give it to the building blocks to improve. I think those are all energy pathway. Acupuncture is huge. We do a lot of acupuncture in the office. We also do a type of regenerative injection therapy where we're injecting those points with a B vitamin. It's a neural therapy. It's a German technique that we learned, but anything to create energy is going to help people. And then of course my favorites are, infusion therapy, hydrogen peroxide therapy. But so fascinating.
Incredible. Can I ask a business question?
Of course.
I see it may be potentially helpful for a lot of people, and even people that are listening to this that might be stepping into your office or another clinic and seeking these treatments out. As a practitioner, and you mentioned it earlier, you get somebody that's biomechanically distorted, maybe neurologically they're going through some chaos. Their energy stores are in the tank, and you have all these different approaches, angles. You know exactly what they need. I joke about with patients sometimes. I'm like, just give me $10,000 and we'll bring it all together. And it's going to take a little bit of time. This is the cost, but let's go. How do you navigate the costs of things when you know that you can bundle all of these things up together, but sometimes people can't afford, everything that you're recommending, but maybe you come back to prioritizing, one or two of those things. And I know you have a wonderful gal that presents some of the financial stuffs, and I know that was a big move for you, and it has been for me. I did the same thing of getting myself out of the finances, because I'll be like, oh, let's just throw this in. We'll do this and I'll eat this. How do you navigate that in the business world? Just kind of a fun business question.
Man, it's such a good and hard and easy question. I mean, we could spend a lot of time on this, and the psyche that goes along with the whole process of healthcare, and who's responsible for healthcare. Is it the patient? Is it the insurance company? Is it the government? And then where resources are going, and the resources meaning, from the patient. And it's hard because there are some people that can't afford it. A lot of people can't afford it. And unfortunately, we've not only have we done that, but we've set up a system, I think, that's really unhealthy and prevents healing. So here's the system that I'm talking about: is if we make it so that we subsidize the most expensive healthcare practices in the world, which is the traditional American allopathic Western medicine approach to healthcare, what we've literally done is we've trained people to think, oh, I don't have to be responsible, or I don't have to pay attention to, because I can just go get a pill, or I can just go get surgery, and so many people have come in and said, well, we'd love to do this, but will insurance pay for it? And insurance doesn't pay for it. They don't pay for, preventative, cutting edge therapies. Matter of fact, I have one problematic medical relationship that frequently tells people, well, if Dr. West stuff really worked, it would be covered by insurance. And so when everybody says, hey, I'm thinking about going over there, and he'll say that, and then people will be like, oh yeah. Some people are like, oh yeah, that's totally right. And other people are like, wait a minute. And then of course I tell people like, hey, I got it. Like, let me just walk you through this. Like, does insurance pay for brushing your teeth? Nope. Do they pay for, being, clean, washing your clothes? Like, hygiene has prevented more diseases than like anything else, right? It's just being clean. Did they pay? And of course they don't. Do they pay for your gym membership? But no, we know it's a good thing to exercise. And so that question about who can afford it and who can not afford it is a hurdle and a problem, and causes a lot of heartache for it. So, and the reason why I say that is because like getting to this position was really like, I had a lot of, I spent $150,000 getting my first doctorate in 2020. And then I think I've spent at least $1 million in continuing education and other things, learning how to do everything. And then from when I got married to when we really started making it so that we could pay our bills and stuff, that was a good 12-year run. And I have told like my patient assistant that helps with doing patient, I have said to her, listen, you got to protect me from me, because literally I would have a free clinic. Because I just want to help people. Like, my sole purpose, like, I believe God put me on the earth to help heal people. Like, that's why I'm here. And I have to recognize, like, you can't do that if your business isn't profitable and you're not making money. So I got to take off my doctor's hat and put on my businessman hat, because you have to be both. You have to be both. Like, in order to run a successful practice, you have to be a good doctor, but you have to be a good businessman as well. And if you don't run your business, I think that you're missing out on some of these wonderful experiences, because when you don't have any concerns about patient finances and experiences and everything else,
Yes.
like one of the problems that we have in healthcare is when people, like, can you imagine trying to run a car dealership, how we run traditional medicine, where we're like, oh, you come on the lot and you're like, hey, I kind of think that car. And they're like, well, wait a minute. Like, you should just go home, and then a car is going to show up. And then, like, we'll decide what color it is. We're going to decide how it functions. And then we're just going to send you a bill. And the bill may be, like, and it's subject to deductibles and write-offs. So you kind of never know what you're going to get billed until the bill shows up, and how much is your out of pocket and your copay. Like, and I've experienced this with some of the conditions happening in my family where we needed surgical interventions and some other things. And we, with my mom, who's going through her own challenges at a different chapter in her life. And financial confusion leads to the inability to completely heal. Like, it's such an important part of the process. That's why when I decided I was going to go purely cash for services in 2008, I was just going to make that jump. I just wanted to serve the patient. I don't want to be the doctor to the insurance company, and I don't want to be fighting with Medicare, and I don't want to do personal injury. And it's not that it's not important and valid. Like, there's other people that do that, so go see them. But when I decided that I was going to do that, it was so liberating to be like, look, I just need to serve the patient in front of me. And I recognize that means that I'm not going to be able to serve part of the patient demographics, a big part of the patient demographics, because now they're going to have to literally find a way to finance the services. So to protect me from myself, I have someone that literally works on all the patient care coordination for me. And then the other thing is recognizing that it's not possible for some people to get the services. Other times it's possible for them to get the services, but they need to prioritize where they're expending the finances.
Yes.
And then there are certain people that it doesn't matter. Like, they'll come in and they're like, here's my Black Amex, or here, tell me where to wire, what, and they have unlimited funds, which I know is a significant, like, it's a very, very small piece of the landscape. But being in healthcare, I think that for providers, you have to be really careful that you don't fall victim to your own, or to a sickness that a lot of doctors have called, the healer syndrome. And the healer syndrome is what happens when doctors say, I didn't get into it for the money. I didn't get into it. I don't want to be a salesman. I don't want to do this in practice. And my response to that, when doctors have asked for coaching and help, is, I'm like, great. If you're not into money, like, give it away. Just give it to, the charity, give it back to collect the money and give it back to the patient, give it to your family. And I just recognize, like, for me, it was 12 years of poverty. Like, from 2000 or 1994 to 2000, my wife and I lived on less than 10,000 a year for 6 years. Like, I've been on welfare. I've been on WIC. I've been on it. Now, I know what it's like to not have money. I've been poorer than anybody that's come into my office.
Sure.
And then trying to, like, make up for, hey, we did, a decade and a half of sacrifice so that, one, I can get a skill set to help people. And I want to use that money to help my family and do, I want to pay for my son's school, and I want to help my, my extended family with different things. And I want to travel with my wife. Like, we didn't like, and I refuse to feel guilty about that. And so if anybody is listening to it going, well, what's he trying to say? I'm trying to answer a really hard question, but at the same time, I really feel when you get your finances dialed in and you get your offer to the universe, that it makes you a better healer. Because doctors that don't have to worry about money, and now they just are like, serve the patient. And I give away an enormous amount of things inside of my office. I mean, the girls are after me all the time saying, hey, you gave away this. I'm like, well, it's my office. And I want to be able to, I choose how to help people and not help people. And then also in that same vein, I have some people that have been really blessed with enormous financial resources that will step up and pay for people too. So we
wow.
call it a scholarship system or scholarship program.
Yeah.
When someone step in and be like, hey, I'm going to help
Oh,
or
that's
do
great.
that. It's a complicated quagmire. And it's super hard. Like it took years to figure out, like, well, what's my value to the universe? Like, what's my value to that? And if you don't be careful, like it'll chew you up and spit you out. And I think that's a lot of times what happens in healthcare when providers burn out, is they don't plan that part of their life. And then even when they're saying, look, I don't care about money, and then they're living paycheck to paycheck, or they get into their 50s or 60s and there's nothing there, that stress load causes other problems. And I mean, healthcare providers they're not the healthiest class, and we have enormous suicide rates in that. And it's because of that question that you asked, that all of that stress from that is part of that.
I agree. No, it's a great answer. And it is very complicated. But I agree with you and resonate with that. We've taken some flack on social media. There's a couple rogue ones that would even mention that, like, if you truly cared about people, if you truly cared about healing, you essentially wouldn't charge for this, or you wouldn't charge this amount for it. And it is ludicrous. And that is the shift of responsibility. Expecting the results without, engaging in that. And it's a big responsibility for the patient too. So, I know we're about an hour right now. I want to just, last question, shift some gears. You're a gadget guy. And I love your office because there's stuff I'm like, what is that? And I just came across, I made a phone call. I don't know if we're going to do it, but there's a German based company that has basically a light spectrum from red lights and blue lights and green lights in a catheter that you can actually do into an IV, and even joint injections, and it'll thread through a needle, and you can do. So I'm looking at gadgets. Where are you at with the next gadget? What are you looking to bring in? What excites you right now?
So I saw that gadget at the AOT conference, or at least something similar, with the multiple lights that are going through, and how it's, putting energy and resonance frequencies and everything into the blood. And I like that stuff. So like, I'm like, okay, I'd love that. Currently, right, I'm out of room. I can't put any more gadgets into the office. And I never thought that was happening when we moved in, 10 years ago. I'm like, I'll never, ever use this room. There are so many things that I want. I want an ozone sauna. I want a HOCAT. I want a submarine hyperbaric. I want a new Rife machine. I want the ultraviolet therapy. Anything from German, like, I'm in, right? Anything that comes out of Germany, like, I want to buy it. So when it comes to gadgets, we got a new shockwave therapy. I have a new red bed therapy. I've got a theta bed chamber. I've got a rapid transcranial magnetic stimulation therapy. I've got an AOO scan. And some of the stuff that I buy doesn't work. Like, I have a little graveyard of stuff where I'm like, hey, I thought this would work. And my wife will say, hey, whatever happened to that thing? I'm like, oh yeah, I use it all the time. It's in storage. It doesn't work put together. So, out of all the seminars that I go to, I'm always running into something. There's a new vagus nerve stimulator that is really cool, that patients can take it home. It's not prohibitively expensive, that I'm experimenting around right now. I really like just helping to people be accountable. I really like the Aura rings, which you put on and it tells you how you're sleeping and how many steps you walk. Like, I love that stuff. And so my wife jokingly tells me, any gadget salesman, any vendor knows that if they go through our little town in Idaho, that they're almost guaranteed a sale, because Dr. Wells, we're like, oh, I love it. And so I try to be judicious but I get excited with the potential of, well, can I help more people with this? Can I accelerate our treatment plans instead of needing, 10 or 20 or 5? Can we get it to 2 or can we get it to 1, or can we go from, a big series chelation therapy of 30, can we get it to 10? And my thought process behind that is, if I could get my patients better on one visit, like I would never not be busy.
Yeah.
I know that the void would fill. If everybody came one time, okay, they're healed. And now that, like, there's always going to be someone there, and the team was asking, "Oh, Dr. West, when are you going to stop?" And I'm like, "Look, my mission statement is to reach, teach, and heal the world." Like that's what I get excited about. If I won the lottery, I'd still go to the office. I love what I do. And so I really like that. And the gadgets help me to get outcomes. And sometimes you hit a home run and sometimes you strike out. And I think you froze. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. You were saying, and sometimes.
Okay, so sometimes you, with your gadgets, you hit a home run, and sometimes you strike out. That's what I was saying on that. But love that machine that you're talking about. I'd love to have one, 100%. And I'd love to get an EWAT machine. Like I'd love to get Dr. Schellenberger's mitochondrial machine. I just don't have room for it.
Yeah.
And when my son comes back in 3.5 years, our goal is to, build a new facility with, twice the space that we have now. And then I'm going to go gadget crazy. Just got to get 3.5 years, and then I want to get
checklist. I love it. Well, Doc, I appreciate sitting with you. It's been an honor again. I got to get up and just hang out.
All right, for sure.
Real soon. And tell people how they get a hold of you. West Clinic Online.
West Clinic Online is for our patient base.
Okay.
We do some very advanced medical training with, IVs and injections, and how we run the practice, and how you get your team culture and everything dialed in. So any healthcare providers who want to check us out at henrysguild.com. Nice. Henry's my dad. I have dad goggles on, but he's the best healer that I've ever ran into, and I'm totally biased. But so I named it after that. And then a guild is an association of like-minded people. So if there's interest in doctor stuff, it's Henry's Guild. Patient stuff, it's westcliniconline.com.
I love it. And I can attest to Henry's Guild. You've done wonders for our crew here in Elko, and for me as a natural healer. So again, I appreciate you, and I look forward to seeing what you're doing with when Carter gets back. 3 years to the team?
3.5. It's 4.5 years. He's in a dual doctorate program. He just got year 1. So 4.5 years total program. He's got 3.5 to go. Not that I'm counting. I'm not counting for him to the days to come back, but anyway, and I'm excited to work with him. It's going to be, the highlight of my career was working with my dad for 10 years.
Yeah.
This next highlight's going to be working with my son for a while.
I can only imagine. Yeah, I have one that's going to graduate high school, and he's starting to chew on some of these angles. So I only can hope that he goes that direction. So, well, Doc, thanks for shedding all your knowledge and sharing with us over this last hour. And best wishes. We'll talk soon.
All right, buddy. See you later.
All right. Bye.